They cleared the range. No one spoke above a whisper. The ghost zone was cursed. Every top shooter from Delta, SEALs, even Black Recon had tried and failed. At 600 meters, the steel crow target still stood, untouched. Wind shear, mirage drift, and impossible angles had beaten the best. Then Colonel Stratton called it, shut it down. No one's making that shot. But before the order echoed, the crow vanished in a flash of sparks, split mid-air. No rifle had fired. No muzzle flash, no sound. Spotters scrambled, thermal was empty. Radar clean, just a soft voice crackled through the headset. Check your 6. They all turned. Only one person stood still, Lieutenant Rayan Thorne, arms folded, no weapon in hand, and a red dot still flickering where the impossible shot had landed. Drop the name of your city in the comments. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. And if stories that break the rules of what's possible excite, hit that subscribe button. This journey's just getting started. The Montana sky burned orange as the morning sun sliced through razor-cold winds across the restricted Black Ridge testing range. Shadows stretched across the gravel, touching the boots of the most lethal marksmen the world had to offer. Delta Force, Marine Raiders, British SAS, and the elusive Ghost Unit. They weren't here for glory. They were here to attempt the impossible. Among them, Lieutenant Rayan Thorne stood completely still, a silhouette against the horizon and no gear unpacked, no rifle in hand, just watching. Not far away, Commander Jarek Solon knelt beside a matte black case, unlocking it with the same care a priest gives to a sacred relic. His rifle, a custom-built bolt-action monstrosity nicknamed Black Echo, gleamed in the dusty sunlight. At 38, Solon wasn't just the program's most accurate shooter, he was its legend. "Wind's a killer today," muttered his spotter, eyes squinting at the violently flapping wind flags. "Shears twisting at 20 knots. Humidity's climbing fast." Solon didn't flinch. His fingers adjusted the scope like a machine calibrated for fate. He'd ranked in the top 3 6 years straight. Missed once. At 3,150 meters, the outer edge of what they all feared. "The ghost zone. Thermals are spiking," the spotter added, scanning the warping skyline. "This won't be clean." Solon said nothing. He'd been aiming for this day for over a decade, and every breath, every heartbeat had led him here. All around them, the best of the best loaded handcrafted rifles, each weapon more expensive than most sports cars. Some prayed, some boasted, some just stared downrange like it was death staring back. And then there was Sarah Neela. She didn't touch a weapon. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. Clad in simple fatigues, her expression unreadable beneath a scar-laced face and sharp gray eyes, Sarah Neela stood on the far edge of the line. Her prosthetic right hand, painted with matte ceramic plating, gleamed as the sun rose higher. It caught attention, not because it looked intimidating, but because she didn't try to hide it. Competitors noticed her, but none approached, because Sarah Neela had only shown up at one range in the last 5 years. And that day, a 3,600-meter target had vanished mid-air. No flash, no sound, no shooter. Just a whisper across the line. That wasn't a bullet. That was her. And now she was back. She wore standard-issue fatigues, no patches, no insignias, no name tag. Only a single rank bar shimmered faintly on her collar, Sergeant First Class. But even without markings, Sarah Neela drew eyes like a storm on the horizon. Then with a sudden gust of wind, Colonel Bogard Price stepped into the center of the range. Salt and pepper hair, razor fade military cut, and a voice carved from gravel. His presence silenced the murmurs instantly. "Gentlemen," he called out, his tone as sharp as a rifle crack. "Today we do more than compete. We test the limits of physics, flesh, and fear." The crowd of elite operators turned toward him. Delta, SEALs, foreign Spec Ops units, all now facing a challenge that made even them uneasy. "We're pushing beyond 3,600 meters, Price continued, letting the number hang in the air. "Into what we call the ghost zone." A few marksmen exchanged quiet, knowing looks. Others stiffened. They'd heard of the ghost zone. Most had never dared to fire into it. "For those new to the term," Price said, eyes scanning the lineup, "it's simple. No confirmed kill has ever been made under combat conditions past that line. Not with our rifles. Not with enemy tech. Not by anyone." Commander Jarek Solon remained expressionless, but a flicker passed through his gaze, the same look men get when ghosts from the past crawl up their spine. He had chased this number for years. Today it was personal. Colonel Price's voice rose again, cutting through the wind. Standard rules apply. Starting at 1/500 meters, 3 shots per station. You need 2 confirmed hits to advance. The final mark is 3,750 meters, if anyone survives that long. That one's for the record books. He paused, studying them like a battlefield. General staring at maps. No one else could read. Any questions? No one spoke. These men didn't ask questions, they created legends. That's why they were here. First relay, firing line in 15, Price concluded, checking his watch before turning away. As the competitors returned to their stations, tension thickened in the air. Tools were double-checked. Wind calculations scribbled. Prayers whispered. Off to the side, away from the controlled chaos, Lieutenant Recon Thorne stood near the calibration tents. His presence was quiet, surgical. He carried no rifle, just a rangefinder and a sharp pair of eyes that looked like they'd seen more than war. He wasn't here to shoot. He was here to observe. At that moment, a young spotter, barely, past his early 20s, approached the woman who sat quietly at the edge of the tarmac. Not competing today, Sergeant? He asked, eyes curious but respectful. Sarah Nyla didn't move. Her prosthetic hand rested calmly in her lap, metallic fingers catching the light, as her eyes stayed locked on the far off, targets shimmering in the heat. Not exactly, she said flatly. Her tone wasn't rude, but it was final. She offered no explanation, no emotion, no hint of purpose. The young lieutenant, clearly Recon Thorne, assigned as a technical observer for today, stood silently for a second, unsure whether to press further. But something in her presence warned him not to. He gave a respectful nod and turned, back toward the line, though he couldn't help glancing, back at her one last time, because something told him. She wasn't just watching, she was waiting. Colonel Price's voice thundered again across the range, slicing through the growing wind like a rifle crack. Gentlemen, today we find out if the ghost zone finally bleeds, or if it remains untouchable. That line landed heavy. You could feel it. No one even blinked. The first phase unfolded like a well-oiled drill. At 1/500 meters, targets dropped cleanly. No surprises. For these elite marksmen, it was target practice, child's play. But everyone knew it wouldn't stay that way. Commander Jarek Solon exhaled slowly as he settled behind the bipod. His hands moved with ghost-like precision, adjusting his scope like a pianist tuning for war. Each shot clean. Each breath measured. Each correction silent between him and his spotter, who only whispered numbers. 3 centimeters left. Adjust 0.4 up. Wind shift incoming. Mark it. They moved like math and instinct fused into a single rhythm. Solon was in the zone, but he knew. This range wasn't about the first shots. It was about the last ones. 2 minutes to rotation! The range officer's voice cut in. Competitors leapfrogged forward to 1/800 meters. The rhythm intensified. The pressure mounted. Rifles locked into fresh positions. But through the buzz, one figure remained still, Sergeant Sarah Nyla. She sat alone. Not a movement. Not a blink. Colonel Price approached her slowly. His voice, when it came, was low and strangely soft. Comfortable, Sergeant Nyla? Yes, sir. His tone shifted slightly. The commanding edge returned, but it bent around something deeper. Respect, maybe, or regret. You're here to observe. Nothing more. Understood? Understood, sir. She didn't flinch. But for the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not emotion, intention. Colonel Price gave a small nod and walked away, the dust swirling at his heels. A few yards away, Lieutenant Recon Thorne had seen the whole exchange. He didn't understand it, not fully. But his gut said this woman wasn't just another observer. She was something else. By the time shooters reached 1,200 meters, the tension finally cracked. The wind had changed. Not gradually and violently. It tore sideways, unpredictable. Every ballistic formula just crumbled. 2 competitors missed their marks, both seasoned veterans. They stepped back, heads held high, but eyes hollow. Disqualified. Now the game had begun. Solon, still perfect. His 2,400-meter. Shots hit like ghosts, barely touching the steel before it rang. One shot sliced just 1.7 centimeters from the center. His confidence didn't rise. It deepened, quiet, deadly. Maybe today, he'd finally tame it. The ghost zone loomed closer. By 2,800 meters, only 8 competitors remained. The targets looked like pinheads through high-powered scopes. Heat shimmer danced across the desert. The wind was whispering lies, and far off Sarah Nyla hadn't moved. But her hand, her prosthetic right hand, shifted slightly. No one noticed, except Lieutenant Thorne. He saw it, and suddenly, he wasn't watching the shooters anymore. He was watching her. Lieutenant Recon Thorne steadied his breathing as his spotter, eyes locked on the digital readout, murmured, "Temp rising. Humidity's down. Elevation 2 clicks up." Recon nodded, adjusted without a word, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The first round struck. Clean hit. Second round, slightly off-center. Still counted, he was in. "Next distance, 100 meters, barked the range officer. Only 5 shooters stepped forward. The rest silently packed up. No shame in falling short at this level. This wasn't a test of skill. It was a war against physics. As the sun climbed and the mirage intensified, the challenge shifted from marksmanship to survival. At 3,200 meters, only Recon and 2 others remained. Major temperature spikes, warned his spotter. Density altitude climbing hard. Wind shears unpredictable. Recon just nodded. He'd reached this range before, but had never conquered it. He dialed in, fired. Missed. 8 inches high, 2 feet right, came the call. Wind kicked mid-shot. Recon recalibrated, waited. The range went quiet. Then, crack hit. Now one final round. The one that would decide his fate. He hesitated, not out of fear, but precision. Analyzing everything. But the perfect moment never came. He fired anyway. And missed. Just off the plate. "Damn," he muttered under his breath, emotion flickering across his usually unreadable face. Only Captain Zarek Enden of the Norwegian. Special Forces moved forward to 3,500 meters. Known for trusting his gut more than instruments, Zarek was a legend in unconventional ballistics. But even his instincts weren't enough. All 3 of his shots at 3,500 missed. One came dangerously close. Silence followed. Tension coiled in the air. "Physics doesn't negotiate," the range officer said flatly. But seated near the equipment line, unmoving was Sarah Nyla, watching, calm yet unreadable. She hadn't touched a rifle, and yet something about her presence buzzed. With quiet defiance, like a storm, waiting for permission to speak. That's when Recon Thorne approached Colonel Jarek Solon, who had been silent all day. "Sir, requesting permission to attempt 3,600 meters. Lieutenant Recon Thorne said, his voice steady despite the stakes. "You didn't qualify," Colonel Price reminded, pausing, then nodding. "But you've earned the shot, Commander. Take it." Jarek Solon stepped forward without hesitation. Determination was written into his posture like carved steel. His spotter rattled off wind and distance corrections. Jarek made his own mental adjustments, tweaks born from 1,000 hours of instinct. Not theory. He dropped prone. Breathed in, locked in. Crack. Missed dirt plumed far short of the target. Second shot, high and left. Third, wide right. Fourth, nowhere near. Fifth, still a miss. Frustrated, Jarek tossed aside his spotter's notebook. Growling, "It's mathematically impossible." No one blamed him. Not even Colonel Price. "One final attempt," Price declared. The silence that followed was heavy, loaded. 3,750 meters, for the record books. After this, we move on. The murmurs from the crowd froze. Nobody argued. This wasn't standard protocol. This was symbolic, a boundary being drawn. The message was clear. Even legends have limits. As the next shooter readied, Sarah Nyla rose silently from her seat. She moved with the eerie grace of a shadow, stepping behind the firing line, her eyes locked on the distant target, now a blur through the shimmering heat waves. Only Lieutenant Thorne noticed her. Colonel Price's voice echoed over the sand and stillness. "Some barriers exist for a reason. Some zones stay ghosts because nature commands it. What we saw today only proves that truth. One by one, competitors fired. One by one, they missed. Yarek's final shot came heartbreakingly close. A kiss of dust mere inches from the steel. There was polite applause. The experiment was over. Colonel Price stepped forward to close it out. "Gentlemen, this range has proven what physics insists. Beyond 3,600 meters, chaos rules. Ghost zone is still a myth." Suddenly, crack. Everyone flinched. A clean metallic clang rang out across the desert. The steel target at 3,750 meters shuddered, split down the centers, and collapsed. The halves clanged to the ground in perfect symmetry. Silence, then chaos. "Who fired that shot?" Colonel Price barked, his command voice cracking with disbelief. No one answered. Someone tell me, who fired? The spotters scrambled. No muzzle flash, one reported. No sound before impact, said another. Check the seismic sensors, Yarek ordered. A technician called out. No ground impact recorded. That shot came from the air, not below. The crowd turned as one. Standing at the far end of the range, hair whipped by wind, stood Sarah Neela. She held no weapon, no rifle. Just stood still, calm, cold, like she had been waiting for this moment for years. Her prosthetic right hand dangled at her side, the fingers slightly curled, unmoving. What had just happened? Whispered Jarek Solon, the words barely audible. No one answered, because no one understood what they had just seen. Colonel Price's entire demeanor shifted. His posture stiffened as though standing before a superior, and with a measured breath, he announced, Gentlemen, meet Sergeant First Class Adrisa Voigt, original architect of Project Long Reach. A ripple of silence followed. Most of the sharpshooters remained blank-faced. But among the older officers, there were subtle glances, recognition, and disbelief. Lieutenant Rayan Thorne took a cautious step forward. Sir, there was no shot. No sound, no trajectory. The steel just broke. Price nodded slowly, his tone grave. That's exactly why they shut Long Reach down. Because it worked. Adrisa finally spoke. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the thick silence like glass. You came here asking if the ghost zone could be conquered. But while you stared through scopes, you forgot to look within. Jarek Solon approached her, scanning her face like it held the blueprint to the impossible. You did that? Without a rifle? She met his gaze, steady, unshaken. The weapon is irrelevant. It's the intent that matters. The calculation. The connection. Colonel Price cleared his throat and continued. Sergeant Voigt was embedded in a classified program over a decade ago. Most details remain sealed. But what you saw today was approved by the highest levels. A stunned Norwegian sniper raised his voice, almost laughing in disbelief. You're telling us she shattered that steel target? With her mind? Price didn't flinch. I'm telling you she succeeded where every other method failed. How she did it is secondary to the fact that she did. The crowd erupted. Shouts, questions, disbelief in every language. Price raised a firm hand. This concludes today's demonstration. Remember your confidentiality oaths. What happened here stays here. He motioned toward a cluster of low buildings near the horizon. Refreshments are in the mess hall. Sergeant Voigt and I will join you shortly. As the others moved off, still buzzing with shock, Yarek Solon stayed behind, his eyes locked on Adrisa. That's not physically possible, he whispered. She turned slightly, her expression unreadable. Neither is hitting a target at 3750 meters under these conditions, yet you tried, why? He hesitated, then said almost to himself, because pushing boundaries is the only way forward. Adrisa gave a single, knowing nod. Just then, Colonel Price returned, having ensured the others were gone. The storm wasn't over. It had just begun. That wasn't part of the plan. Sergeant, Colonel Price said flatly, not turning. You were instructed to observe only. With respect, sir, she replied. Her voice steady but strained. Observation wasn't enough. They needed to witness it. Price paused. They're not cleared for that tier of the program. They are now, she said, simple, final. A long exhale, no rebuke. Just the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but not far off either. Lieutenant Rayan Thorne, Price said, escort Sergeant Voigt to the briefing room. I'll debrief the others. As they walked across the gravel toward the inner compound, Thorne's curiosity broke free. How the hell did you do that? He asked under his breath. I was watching you the whole time. You didn't move. You didn't signal anyone, nothing. And then, boom. Split target. No shot fired? It's complicated, Sarah Nyla muttered. And painful. She flexed her right hand, the metal fingers of her prosthetic catching a sliver of dying sunlight. Each time it takes something. Takes what? More than most are willing to pay. Inside the mess hall, the air crackled with speculation. Some said the steel plate had been pre-cut and rigged with micro-detonators. Others murmured about invisible drones or experimental energy weapons. Has to be a trick, Captain Zarek Endon barked. Psych warfare to spook the other units. Total theater. But why? A younger marksman shot back. We're not even in competition. We're all on the same damn side. Yarek Solon sat alone in the corner, hands clasped, eyes unblinking. In his 20 years of service, across 3 continents and 2 wars, he'd seen advanced tech, miracles even. But this was different. No sound, no muzzle flash, no tech signature, just destruction. Colonel Price walked in. The noise evaporated. He didn't raise his voice. "Gentlemen, what you witnessed was real, and it's classified. Effective immediately." He waited. No one spoke. "I'll give you limited context, but I need verbal acknowledgement. You understand the sensitivity of what you've seen?" Each man nodded or voiced consent, slowly, uneasily. 10 years ago, Price began, DARPA launched an initiative. Codename Long Reach. The objective? A pause. To weaponize cognitive projection. A scoff from the back. "You mean mind control?" "Not control," Price clarified. "Manipulation. Physical interaction through pure focus. The ability to affect matter and at a distance using consciousness alone." The room fell deathly still. Disbelief thickened the air like smoke. Most test subjects produced negligible results. A few triggered minor effects in lab conditions. He turned toward the door where Sarah Nyla stood silhouetted. Then came Voight. She didn't just pass projections. She exceeded them. But there's a cost. And in that silence, broken only by the hum of distant generators, and no one dared ask what that cost truly was. Yarrick Solon's eyes narrowed. The prosthetic hand. Colonel Price gave a slow nod. Neural feedback loop. Early prototype. That mission ended the program. Too unstable. Too dangerous. But Sergeant Voight never stopped. Not really. His results off the charts. His loyalty unshakable. Orders meant nothing when your body remembered how to win. Why now? Yarrick asked, his voice low. Why show us this now? Price didn't blink. Because the battlefield is changing, fast, and if we don't evolve, we die standing still. Our enemies already crossed that line. We either catch up or get erased. The door slid open. Sarah Nyla stepped in, with Lieutenant Rayan Thorne just behind her. Every conversation in the room died on contact. You could feel it, the energy shift. Not because of rank, because of what she had become. She walked slowly to the front. No ceremony, just gravity. The shadows under her eyes had deepened since the last mission. The scars on her hands told a story no report could. Ask, she said, voice calm but worn. I'll answer what I can. Silence. Then Yarrick leaned forward. Does it hurt when you do what you did out there? She didn't hesitate. Yes, like fire in every nerve. It gets worse. Every time. Then why do it? Because I can. Her eyes flicked across the room. And because there are moments when bullets don't reach far enough. A younger marksman raised his hand. Could anyone learn this? Or are you just different? She looked directly at him. Both, it lives in degrees. I was the highest marker, but there were others. The program died before we could find out who else might have made it. From the back, Captain Zarek Endon stepped forward. His skepticism had softened into something closer to awe. Could you teach us? Sarah glanced at Colonel Price. He gave a single, deliberate nod. That's why I'm here, she said. To find out who's ready. That was when it hit them. They weren't just witnesses to a demonstration. They were test subjects, candidates. The stakes had shifted. Colonel Price's voice cut through the tension. You've all experienced the ghost zone, a place where bullets fail, physics folds, and only the impossible survives. That zone exists because we accepted its limits. Maybe it's time we didn't. For the next hour, Sarah Nyla answered every question thrown her way. Not once did she flinch. No, she insisted, this isn't magic. Or mind reading. This is focus, pure intent shaped into energy. You don't shoot the bullet. You become it. She paused. Same wind drift. Same drop, same math. Just no casing. When the session ended, Colonel Price stood. Anyone who wants to go further, he said, will receive instructions tomorrow morning. But know this, once you start, there's no going back. And just like that, the room stopped being a briefing. It became a threshold. Let me know if you want this extended with even more cinematic buildup. Or an opening hook added like, they thought the ghost zone was a myth. Until the steel target split without a shot fired, this is entirely voluntary. There are risks involved that even we don't fully understand yet. The marksmen filtered out of the room, their faces clouded with a mix of intrigue and unease. Some smiled nervously, trying to mask their unease with bravado. Lieutenant Rayan Thorne remained silent near the back, arms crossed, observing. A healthy dose of skepticism, said Sarah Nyla, stepping forward with a faint, cryptic smile, can be useful. Would you like proof? She didn't wait for a response. Her hand made a subtle motion toward the spotting, scope lying on the steel table beside them. Suddenly, the instrument slid cleanly across the table's surface as if pulled by an invisible thread, and halted, perfectly in front of Jarek Solon. His gaze snapped between the scope and Sarah. Her nose had begun to bleed, a single line of red cutting down her cheek like a wound that cost too much. Even small demonstrations have a cost, she said, wiping the blood with the back of her hand. Distance increases difficulty, but every use draws from somewhere deep inside. Jarek stared at her, a question forming. Then why risk it, he asked. She tilted her head slightly as if the answer were so obvious it pained her to explain. For the same reason you push your body to the edge in training. To find out if the impossible is simply something not yet achieved. That evening, long after the adrenaline had faded and the tension settled into silence, Lieutenant Rayan Thorne found himself assigned to monitor Sarah. She sat under soft medical lights in the base's infirmary, sensors tracing her vitals. Your blood pressure is spiking dangerously, said the medic, eyes narrowing as he studied the readout. And your neural activity shows signs of seizure patterns. If you continue this, it could kill you. Noted, she said evenly. But the calm in her voice wasn't surrender. It was quiet defiance. Once the medic left, Rayan pulled up a chair beside her. Is it really worth it? He asked, his voice low. This toll on your body? Sarah didn't answer right away. Her eyes found his.
Have you ever discovered something you could do? Something no one else could?
Something that mattered? When nothing else would? Rayan thought for a long moment. There was one time, I didn't aim. I just knew, pure instinct. And would you take that shot again? Even knowing it might cost me? If it meant someone else lived, yes. Every time. The next morning, the range buzzed with tension. Colonel Price stood at the front, his voice steady and clipped. 5 of you volunteered for preliminary testing, he said. Today is not about success. It's about potential. Among them stood Jarek Solon and Rayan Thorne, eyes forward, shoulders squared. Sarah moved through the line like a ghost in combat boots. Focus on the object, she said softly. Don't force it. Don't want it to move. Just know it should. For hours, the candidates stared at small objects placed in front of them. Coins, scopes, cartridges, straining with every fiber of thought. Nothing happened. Frustration began to fray the room. This is time wasted, one muttered. We could be training in actual combat, not this. Sarah turned slowly. Actual combat, she repeated, her voice cool. Like landing a bullet at a distance most believe impossible? When that becomes the new standard, will you be ready or still stuck in tradition? Jarek didn't speak. He kept his gaze locked on the object in front of him, still, silent, focused. Sarah noticed. She knelt beside him. You're trying too hard, she whispered. It's not about making the object move. It's about becoming the movement itself. That doesn't make sense, Jarek replied. Neither does quantum collapse, she said. But it governs everything. Some things you don't learn. You become them. As the sun sank behind the dunes, Colonel Price approached her privately. Any prospects? She hesitated. 2, maybe 3. Jarek has the discipline. Rayan has the instinct. They're not ready, but they could be. We don't have time, Price said flatly. Our intel says other nations are experimenting with similar capabilities. The ghost zone isn't theory anymore, it's a battleground. Push them too fast and they'll burn out, Sarah warned. You saw what happened to the others. Their minds fractured. I know, he admitted. But this isn't about winning medals anymore. We need something our enemies can't predict or defend against. Sarah's eyes shifted toward the far end of the range, where the shattered target still lay from her earlier shot. The mark was barely visible at 3,750 meters, but its message echoed louder than words. The battlefield had changed, and some weapons were now forged in the mine. Then we accelerate the training and live with the fallout. 3 months into the revived Long Reach protocol, the early morning silence of the Montana Blackridge facility was shattered, literally, by the sound of breaking glass. Lieutenant Rayan Thorne burst into the training room, heart pounding. Inside, Jarek Solon stood surrounded by shards of test objects, eyes glazed, a slow trickle of blood running from his nose. I almost had it, Jarek gasped, swaying. The pencil moved. I know it did. Rayan caught him before he collapsed, lowering him into the nearest chair. "You've been at this all night again, haven't you?" "The doctor said no more than 4 hours per session," he added, tension rising. "Rules are for people who accept limits," Jarek muttered, quoting Sarah Neela's mantra, a line she'd drilled into their skulls since day one. The program was producing uneven results. Of the 5 hand-picked volunteers, 2 had already washed out. Migraines, temporary blindness, nerve spasms. Still, Captain Zarek Enden kept pushing, skeptical but unyielding, while Jarek threw himself into training with something that looked more like desperation than drive. Rayan juggled the weight of 2 worlds, his duties as team coordinator, and his own training progressing slowly but steadily. That's when Sarah Nyla entered, calm, calculated, her presence commanding instant focus. She took one glance at Jarek and didn't flinch. "You pushed again," she said. "Not judgment, just fact. I felt something connect this time," Jarek insisted, his voice strained. Like a switch flipping, a circuit closing. Sarah nodded slowly. "Breakthroughs happen right at the cliff's edge. But that's also where the fall begins." Then Colonel Price walked in. No knock, no greetings. Just a man with charts, a deadline, and Washington breathing down his neck. "The suits are impatient," Price said flatly, scanning the progress board. "They don't want hope, they want proof." "We have proof," Sarah fired back. "Rayan can already manipulate electromagnetic pulses. He's done it in closed quarters. A distance demo would burn me out, but I'll do it again," she added, quiet but fierce. "No." Rayan's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You saw the scans. Your neural map lit up with stress markers. Another round might fry your cognitive lattice, permanently." Yarek, still pale, backed him up. "She's right. We're close. We just need time." Colonel Price didn't flinch. "Time," he said coldly, "is the one thing you don't have." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "We don't even have confirmation the enemy can do this. Pentagon's chasing ghosts." "Pentagon's chasing certainty," Price snapped. "The delegation arrives tomorrow. They expect something real, not theories." As he left, silence fell. Then, from the corner, Jarek spoke. Quiet. Resolved. "I'll do it." Rayan's head turned. Sarah looked stunned. "You're not ready," Rayan said. "You know that." Yarek didn't blink. "That's why it has to be me. And you're still just brushing the surface of basic object manipulation," Lieutenant Rayan Thorne said sharply. "But I've grasped the theory now," Jarek Solon insisted, voice calm but determined. "The mental calculations, the kinetic mapping. I've been a marksman for 20 years. If anyone can convert traditional ballistics into this new force manipulation, it's me." Sarah Nyla studied him in silence. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes betrayed the weight of what she knew. "The toll is brutal. You've seen what it does to me, and I've trained for years to survive it." "Then I'll take the hit," Jarek said, his tone unwavering. "This is what I signed up for." That afternoon, the medic strapped biosensors to his arms and temples. His vitals fed into the room's central display while Sarah led him through deep focus drills. A steel target was mounted precisely at 500 meters. A bold choice for a first real attempt, but not impossible. "Don't force the movement," she reminded him softly. "You're not pushing the target. You're becoming the force. See it. Feel the impact as if it's already occurred. Then let it happen." Yarek gave a nod, short, sharp, focused, and locked eyes on the glinting target in the distance. For 30 long minutes, nothing happened. Lines on the monitors danced higher. His pulse surged. Brainwaves spiked erratically. "His BP's skyrocketing," a medic warned. "Danger zone. We need to call this." "Just wait," Sarah said, eyes never leaving Jarek. Her voice was tight, hopeful, desperate. Yarek's breathing grew ragged. Beads of sweat glistened on his brow despite the air-conditioned silence. Then the alarm started wailing, his vitals dipping into the red. And then, a sharp puff of dust exploded beside the target. Not a direct hit, but not wind either. A force, a near impact. Something had shifted. "He did it," Rayan whispered, stunned. Yarek collapsed. His body went limp, slumping forward. The medics rushed in. Sarah didn't follow. She stood frozen, breathing shallow, lips parted. Hours later in the infirmary, Jarek blinked awake, disoriented. He looked up at the ceiling, then around at the equipment. "Did I hit it?" he asked hoarsely. Rayan smiled faintly. "Close enough to shake every doctrine we've ever believed in, but that was definitive proof." Captain Zarek Endon muttered, reviewing the footage. A near impact at 500 meters on a first attempt? That's unprecedented. Jarek Solon tried to sit up, then winced and fell back. Feels like I got hit by a train. Neural fatigue, Sarah Neela explained. Your mind isn't built for this kind of channeling, yet. It'll pass. But only if you rest. Colonel Price entered, his expression grim. Impressive as it was, a near miss won't cut it. The delegation arrives tomorrow expecting confirmation of Ghost Zone capabilities. I can't do 3,750, Jarek admitted. Maybe not ever. Sarah stood. Then we go with the original plan. I'll do it. You've been medically grounded. And I'm ignoring that advice, she snapped. This matters more than my recovery window. 3 civilian officials, military in posture, if not in uniform, arrived with their scientific advisors. Tension hung thick in the air as they approached the same. Range used months. Earlier for the long-range trials. Colonel Price gestured to the briefing screen. Gentlemen, welcome to Project Longreach. Today we demonstrate. They positioned themselves safely back, eyes skeptical. Sarah Nyla stood alone on the firing line. No weapon, just her mind. You don't have to do this, Jarek whispered from behind her. Yes, I do, she said softly. Some lines can't be crossed gradually. Someone has to leap first. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. The wind screamed across the barren range, worse conditions than the competition. Everyone watched in silence. Suddenly, her prosthetic hand spasmed. A thin ribbon of blood ran from her nose, then her ears. Then it happened. The target at 3,750 meters. Shattered, not cracked, obliterated. As if struck by a missile, not a bullet. The officials stood frozen in disbelief. Sarah collapsed. The medics rushed in. She was convulsing, unresponsive. Get her to the medical bay, now! Price's voice cut through the chaos. Severe neural trauma, the chief physician said quietly. Stroke and seizure patterns overlapping. If she survives, there will be lasting damage. Outside her room, Jarek and Rayan waited. She knew this could happen, Jarek whispered. She did it anyway, Rayan replied. Either because she believed in the program, or because she had nothing left to lose. Sarah regained consciousness. The doctors were right. She had lost motor control on her left side, and speech was fragmented, but her eyes, sharp, focused. Colonel Price visited her bedside. The program's been greenlit for full funding. Your demonstration changed everything. She nodded weakly. Later, Khalil asked, was it worth it? After a long struggle, she managed a whisper. Ask me again, when you can do what I did. The facility had transformed. New labs, new recruits. A dozen fresh candidates showed measurable results. Jarek, now leading training, had refined the protocols to minimize physical damage. No one's repeating Sarah's leap overnight, he told her during one of their sessions. But it's working, gradually, safely. Sarah, in a wheelchair, smiled faintly. Smart, sustainable, but will it be enough? Tension with rival powers was rising. Word was the Chinese program was advancing fast. The center had become operational. Captain Rayan Thorne now ran logistics. Jarek continued to oversee the trainees. Sarah, now Captain Voight, remained the program's guiding mind. On the anniversary of her breakthrough, 20 recruits demonstrated reliable control up to 1,000 meters. Impressive, but still short of her mark. No one's touched 3,750 since you, Jarek told her. And maybe no one should, she replied. We're learning to work in sync now. Relay projection, group focus. The future's not solo. It's shared power. Colonel Price, now a general, arrived with news. Washington wants a field test. Controlled up? 4-person team. They're not ready, Sarah warned. They're more prepared than you were, he countered. And they've got something you didn't, a system. Jarek and Rayan led the team on a classified mission. Their abilities were limited but decisive. They proved it. Ghost Zone projection could work under real-world stress. Sarah was named director of a new global training facility. Despite her limitations, her insight was unmatched. A new record, 4,100 meters. Not by one operator, but by a team of 3, working in perfect sync. The Ghost Zone barrier had been shattered, without breaking the operator. In her adapted office, Sarah watched the footage in silence. On her desk, Jarek's old spotter's compass. A reminder of how far they'd come. A young recruit knocked on her door. Captain Voight? The new class is ready. She rolled toward the hall. 30 fresh trainees stood at attention, not from duty but reverence. Welcome to Project Long Reach, she said, her voice steady now. The Ghost Zone isn't a place. It's not a number. It's a mindset. Break that and nothing is impossible. Behind the glass, Khalil watched with Price. You think any of them will match her? Khalil asked. That's not the point, Price replied. She showed us the ghost zone was never about distance. It was about belief. The final shot, a new trainee moves a coin across a table, with just her mind. She gasps. Sarah smiles. Remember, she says quietly, the bullet was never the weapon. You are.